because there are a lot of people here, and maybe this way you will listen to me, but if you don't listen, please give me a sign so I can raise my voice. Let me start by reading the word of Francis to start my presentation. In a message to his School of Theology in Buenos Aires, celebrating its centenary, he said that it was important to celebrate and get together to recuperate the memory of the presence of God in our life, and to take this memory as a reason to be grateful. This memory is linked to me, to the encounter of the centrality of the poor in the gospel as a challenge to our being Christians. Discovery that I made as a member of a lay Christian community 48 years ago. And I consider this invitation to talk about Christian communities, faith and politics in the context of the world social troubles, an opportunity to recuperate that memory and therefore to be grateful for the opportunity to talk about Christian communities, faith and politics, and the option for the poor. I will start by making memory of the experience of discovering God in relation to the poor. And I will continue with a question of Francisco, who asks, in the same context of this celebration, what is the meaning of being Christian today, here and now? Question that to him leads to reflect and to discern. Task for Christians, theologians, or just Christians gathering communities that want to relate their faith with their life in history. To follow this process of reflection and discernment, Francis refers to the questions that come from the people, expressed in their own language and in their own time. And he says that their fears, quote, their fears and fights, their dreams and struggles, their concerns have an hermeneutic value that cannot be ignored if we want to take seriously the incarnation. Francisco, let me call him in Spanish, says, our God has chosen this path. He has incarnated in this world, crossed by conflicts and injustice, violence, by dreams and hope. Therefore, there is no other place to look for God than in this concrete world, in these streets, neighborhoods, and people in each concrete country. There is Him already redeeming. And it is because of this that the relation between beliefs and politics, or faith and politics, is so relevant. Because God is in history, and we will find Him in history, and changing history, we will be encountering God. So I will go to the point, lay Christian communities. We call them lay communities, base communities, ecclesial communities, Christian communities. They are not only organizations within the Catholic Church, they are Christian communities all around confessions and faiths. It is a place where people, lay people, with bishops, with priests, with all types of vocations, get together to reflect, to look at reality, to reflect, to be present in history. They have different contemporary origins, all responding to pastoral work. The model of young Christian workers from Joseph Cardin is a model very important. The method is still used, and I just have quoted Francis using it, to look the real world, to reflect and discern, to act. These three moments are present in the work of the communities. This method has been taken by all the specialized movements related to Catholic action. It has been used by the CELAM, Conference of Latin American Bishops in Medellín, in Puebla, in Santo Domingo, and in Aparecida, and by members in communities all around the world, and as I said, now by Francis, the Pope. Other models have been developed in relation to parish work in Brazil. It started as the Iglesia que nace do povo, but couldn't progress because of the dictatorship cut it. But then it came back as the comunidades eclesiales de base, the CEPs. In Ecuador, Bolivia, Peru, different types of models, small and large, developed, as well as in Mexico and in El Salvador. You might know many other models in other countries. Communities in Latin America were linked to the poor. People in neighborhoods, reading the Bible, and participating in social mobilizations. The 60s were times of dictatorship in Latin America. Many Christians, bishops, priests, and laity from different religious groups were killed by the repressive regimes in the Southern Cone, Brazil, Chile, Argentina. Repressive governments in the Andean zone controlled civil organizations and cut constitutional freedoms. And later in the 90s, internal struggles raised in Central America, and some may remember the Nicaraguan Revolution. To look, reflect, and discern, to act was a survival resource for committed Christians in these times. Since the mid-70s, there started a resistance in some local churches and among some bishops against Christian communities as a pastoral model. They were considered dangerous, a parallel church. The option for the poor was looked with suspicion. Theologians of liberation were accused of being an ideological or Marxist, but they sustained it as a theology and resisted. In Peru, Christian communities were formed since the first half of the 20th century in some parishes and in the Catholic Action movements. They extended in the 60s to the new urban settlements and to the new missions in the Andes and in the Amazon regions. Some were Christian communities and others were civil society groups, but in many cases they did not have much difference since the majority of the people identify as Christians. Communities were formed by poor people, full of hope and will to create new towns and cities. They were migrants and pioneers, builders and entrepreneurs, and there was a convergence between the pobladores, or land invaders, the missionaries, and the students and workers movements that opened a window for solidarity and companionship. The poor were considered carriers of the gospel, and theology was in relation to pastoral work. It is from these Latin American experiences of suffering, struggle, martyrdom, and achievement that theological reflection recuperated the centrality of the poor in the gospel and in the Bible. Communities are a pastoral path to relate the church with the people, and the option for the poor is a challenge to Christian life, to get involved in, to critically analyze its diverse and changing causes, and to eliminate poverty, and to create new ways of and the creation of new ways of marginalizing and excluding persons from a desirable social life. This trajectory is incorporated in the documents produced in the meetings of CEL, and I already mentioned, and Pope Francis is actively referring to them. Two final notes to finish with memory. The option for the poor does not mean that to be poor is to be good. It is something that goes against the will of God, because goes against the ethic of the kingdom. That is why it demands analysis, identification of causes, and solutions. The preferential option for the poor is a calling to all Christians and to humanity. It is in the Gospel, in Matthew 25, in the Samaritan parable, etc. The more important, however, is that it is a calling for the poor themselves, the marginal and oppressed, to come out from poverty, to emancipate, to demand inclusion, recognition, human dignity and rights, and a calling to speak out, mobilize, and to think on what they value as a good life and have reasons to value, sentiments and motivation to sustain it. Finally, from a sociological perspective, and I value this as something very important, Christian communities open a public space of inclusion and deliberation in society and in the church. They help to build a sort of civil society within the church, where a public space for get together and talk with freedom was possible for all its members, starting by the laity, and their associations and other faith-based organizations enrich civil society in all our countries. I consider this fact to be a very important contribution of the Church to society as a Christian standpoint for emancipatory critical reasoning in the present time, and an urgent need in the context of neoliberalism, where public spaces for deliberation are being taken and transformed by economic firms. My third point, I think I'm on time, yes. Religion and politics, faith and politics. Today, Francisco is bringing back to our memory and hearts this calling, to be an open church and to go to look out for the poor. After a long time of enclosure, suspicion and distrust, Francisco is asking us to be confident, to be faithful to our calling, and to take action in these times of change under the guidance of the Spirit, and to do it as members of church communities. He is referring to the political dimension of faith in action, to the practical consequences of our beliefs and values. Looking back, we can see what we have built together. And I have three very good friends, missionaries from Canada here, that have been 40 years in Peru and I have accompanied them in their tremendous work. There is much more conscience and awareness of human rights, human dignity, and advancement in social inclusions. Traditional forms of domination have been denounced and converted in social and political issues and are not anymore considered natural relations of domination. There are advances in reference to women and gender social relations and rights, ethnic social relations and rights, social and political inclusion of minorities or large group of marginalized people for religious or national reasons. But at the same time, great revolutions in technology and communication are transforming the world, the economy, reducing the state and society to instruments of capital accumulation. Awareness of the new problems is here, in the Foro Social Mundial. And you and we all are working on these issues since 2001. The relation with politics today is local, national, and global. Public spaces have opened in different fronts and need to be renovated. At state level, crises of traditional systems of political parties and organizations appear in every election. The polis is shaking. Global societies have to be critically analyzed and identify their potentials and problems. At regional and local level, civil societies are ready to mobilize for concrete causes and issues. But new visions of a common society where everyone will live a valued life are yet to be built. There are serious problems related to nature, climate change due to the irrational exploitation of natural resources that mobilize us all. Changes that seem not to be new for former colonialized countries, where I include all Latin America, and subaltern groups indeed are new, because in the scale that they are appearing today and are taking now at the global world, and because they go against current progressive tendencies and the hope for equality and justice. Religions as politics are concerned with changing the world at the level of individuals, to change people, to provide moral criteria and values to change their lives. But the religious public space is also being shaped in its relation to civil state and state politics. And I will only mention some points and come to an end. Civil society is a growing public space to be present and to start changes, ideas, projects, actions, values, culture, and networking from the local to the national and global level. And this is a place for religions to be. Political organizations have not been an alternative for decades for some Christian religions, but they were for Catholics with Christian democratic parties, if we remember. Now, they are alternatives for other religions. These experiences have to be evaluated by their own membership and from outside. In Latin America, religious diversity is a new phenomenon, and how different religions relate to politics is something we have to look at. 3, religious persons, bishops, priests, pastors, religious public personalities as individuals participate in politics and express their opinions on key issues without compromising their religious organizations or churches, and engaging in public discussions with other members of their organizations. In Peru, we have always 2 bishops that confront each other in many issues, like death penalty, for instance. And of course. So this is happening. They are doing this. So other religious personalities are present in public discussions. And some of them we know have participated in politics, running for office, as Lugo in Paraguay and priests we have a former priest in our Congress now. Politicians with religious beliefs participate in government positions and contribute with good government. Academics get involved in larger time visions of the whole, critical visions of current processes, providing visions of context in which to operate. And I end. These are many different ways of relating to politics that are open today. And we have to reflect how do we manage all these different possibilities and situations. I end with a question. To what type of society are we moving to? As a sociologist, a basic question to put it is, what type of social solidarity are we building for the future? Which are the bases for interdependence among us? Do we need other humans to live with? As a citizen, this is a basic political question to keep the demos and the polis alive, and not only the techno. And as a Christian, our experience of critical reflection on everyday life from the perspective of the values of the gospel is a very good starting point to imagine a new world possible. Thank you.